Thanks for listening to Marketing B2B Tech, the podcast from Napier where you can find out what really works in B2B marketing today. Welcome to Marketing B2B Technology, the podcast from Napier. Today I'm joined by Abhi Godara. Abhi is the founder and CEO of an AI product called Rytr. Welcome to the podcast, Abhi.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
So it's great to have you on. I mean, I'm interested to learn about Rytr, but first, can you tell me a bit about your career journey and how you got to the point where you decided to found Rytr?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like most good things in life, nothing is like a linear path, I guess, to where you get to today. But I started my career as a professional consultant working in London in one of the big four companies back in 2007-8. Did that for about 5 years, mostly in strategy consulting, a bit of private equity work as well. And then I moved into startup space pretty much for the last 10 years. That's where I've been working in. Started as an early stage investor in one of the leading seed funds in India, worked with more than 50 startups, 150 founders across product, marketing, fundraising, growth, you name it, all those areas where founders need help. And then started my own sort of venture studio based out of Valley, late 2015-16. And that's where I've been dabbling with a lot of homegrown ideas, incubating quite a few product companies, mostly SaaS companies over the years. Some I would say outright failures, a couple of moderate successes, and a few home runs. So that's how pretty much the journey has been over the years. But yeah, it's my passion to work with entrepreneurs who are, solving big problems with their innovative ideas. So that's basically what I love doing.
That's awesome. And I love the fact you've done this in different countries. So I think that international view is really interesting.
Sure. Absolutely.
So you founded Rytr. I mean, Rytr is an AI tool to help people write, unsurprisingly. And if anyone's listening, it's spelled RYTR. So that's the product. What inspired you to build a tool to do AI-generated written content?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. So as an entrepreneur, I've always found content generation to be a pain, especially when you're a small team that is just starting up. And it's a fact that many startups and professionals fail because they don't possess effective marketing and copywriting skills. And moreover, a lot of entrepreneurs, potentially give up on the idea due to the overwhelming nature of content creation. And I've been in the AI space, for the last 5 years, started working on a chatbot platform for influencers and creators, which scaled to millions of users at one point. But we didn't have the technology like Chat GPT at that time, right? Or GPT at that time. So when GPT-3 came out, I think this was back in 2020, so we realized the potential of this technology and the market it could address. Copywriting, creative writing was one of the first use cases which kind of emerged from this tool. So we looked around, evaluated some existing writing tools, and we were not the first ones in the market. We were definitely in the first, few players, who built something like this. But there were other players out there. But we found the experience very frustrating. Tools were delivering, subpar outputs. It was very overwhelming in terms of UX and UI. There was a lot of cognitive overload for users to get started. So at that point, we decided, okay, let's give the market what it deserves. An intuitive AI writing assistant, which offered the best quality of output at a very sort of fair price. So although we were slightly late to the party, but with limited resources and small team, we launched in April, I think, 2021. And since then, we haven't looked back. Currently, we are serving close to, I think, 5 million customers globally with almost perfect ratings pretty much everywhere and recognized as one of the market leaders in the space. So yeah, that's been kind of a journey that we've had over the last couple of years.
That's a huge number of users, and I'd like to go back to that. But first, I think it might be worth for some of the less technical listeners. You talked about Chat GPT and you talked about GPT-3. Can you explain what the difference is and the technology that actually underpins Rytr?
Yeah, so I mean, technology is pretty much like if you go to the really fundamental level, the technology is called transformer models. It's called BERT, which was pioneered by Google back in, I think, 2017-18. So all the sort of future evolutions that you've seen in terms of GPT 1, 2, 3, 3.5, and now Chat GPT is based on that underlying principles and I would say language model, so to say. So that's pretty much, I think, powering all the applications, AI writing applications that you see around you. So Chat GPT is just an evolution of Chat GPT-3, which was like one of the I would say, more mainstream models, which a lot of AI writing companies started using, back starting from 2020 till the end of last year. And GPT 3.5, or Chat GPT as they call, it's just a more refined, sophisticated version trained on even bigger data sets than its predecessor. So that's essentially, the difference between the two. So obviously it's trained on more data, it's more powerful, it can give more sort of I would say better outputs, higher quality outputs than its previous versions. But yeah, the underlying nature of the technology language model is still the same.
And I think we've all, played with Chat GPT and been impressed by its ability to communicate in what feels like very natural English. But I'm interested, you're obviously using, this model to build a tool that's specifically for writing. So what are you doing differently to what's been done, for example, in Chat GPT to make it, better suited to writing blog posts or adverts?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have our own sort of training data, and this is what we have refined over the last couple of years. Again, with ChatGPT or any other sort of piece of AI writing technology, it's the basic principle of garbage in, garbage out is still true. So if you just throw some random inputs or sort of ill-defined prompts, the output that you might get is probably less than optimal, right? So we do a lot of pre-formatting, you can say, at the input level, and post-formatting at the output level, to make sure the output is aligned to the intended use case. So if it is social media posts, blog posts, your job descriptions or songwriting, anything, there is a level of, I would say, intervention that we have to do from our end to make sure the output is customized. The second thing is the reliability of ChatGPT, like the UX, the UI, whole sort of experience of people getting used to it. It takes a little bit of time in the absence of any sort of education. So that's where we have created this very seamless interface, very easy to use, navigate, so folks can get started immediately, right, without having to learn the ABC of AI copywriting techniques. So I think that those are two things we've done. So we have abstracted away all the complexity that users have to go through to understand and use this technology, and two, obviously making sure that the use cases are aligned to the sort of intended needs of the end users. And the third is obviously, the pricing and the value for money aspect. So we are still one of the most, I would say, value for money products out there in this space. And that's how we've kept the whole proposition very, very oriented towards, early stage users, smaller teams, who do not have necessarily have the bandwidth and maybe the budget to go for like, more expensive solutions out there.
I think that's a really interesting point. I mean, you're giving people quite a lot because, you talked about the underlying data, you're adding extra data. So your product understands adverts better than maybe ChatGPT does. But you're also, almost providing this structure, this kind of wizard to help you create content. So
right.
I mean, what are your users really looking for? Is it the quality? Is it improving the speed of generation of content? Or what's really driving the way that you're introducing features for the product?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, actually. So I think if you just say, okay, well, it's about speed of content creation with compromising the quality, I don't think it works. People want everything. They want faster content generation, higher quality output at a very affordable price point, right? So you have to tick all those boxes. And luckily in our case, we've been doing all three of them at the same time. So things like just the document management, the workflow management. Again, going back to the point that we abstract away all the complexity. So you can, as a writer, you have to not just create content, but you have to manage the content as well. So creating documents, sharing those documents, downloading that content, managing your team, allowing your team members access, seeing the analytics, history, all that stuff is what you need if you're running a proper business, right? And those are the things which you cannot expect in a standalone or sort of Chat GPT kind of platform, which is more geared towards, let's say, just casual use cases and end users who are not necessarily interested into those kind of workflow management tools. So we provide that suite of features so that users can get the maximum value, but at the same time they can create really high quality content with the least amount of time it takes to get there. So yeah, so we have to balance out between those things. We are constantly adding features which can improve that workflow management for smaller teams, freelancers, agencies, And of course, keeping an eye on how can we improve the quality of output, every day. Even if it's like 0.1% improvement, we try to make sure, those interventions are added so that the quality gets better over time. So it's a compounding effect.
And I mean, presumably one of the biggest challenges you face is where you see a lot of AI generated content, you can begin to feel it, particularly from something like Chat GPT. You just get a sense that it's not a real human. So what are you doing to really develop the product to make it feel much more human when people are reading the output?
Exactly. So I think this is more of a philosophical question, Mike, and that's a good point you raised, because as a company, as a team, as a product, from day one, our philosophy has been we don't want to encourage content factories to be built on top of these AI writing platforms. The world doesn't need more content; it needs better content and more curated content. So if you look at how it works on Writer, when you play around with the tool, you will notice that we don't mindlessly allow people to generate content by pressing like just keep writing kind of button. It only takes in a limited amount of input and then gives out a certain amount of output so that people can review the outputs when they come out, and they can edit and then refine it as they go along. So it's not like you press a button, you have like a 5,000 word blog post ready for you to be published. And I think that's where a lot of people are getting it wrong. I mean, unless you spend time, effort in reviewing and refining the outputs, it will feel very mechanical in nature in some shape or form. The second thing we do is we provide a lot of these granular controls. Like we have a feature called readability score, which gives you the idea of how readable the content is. Second is we have an inbuilt plagiarism checker as well. So you can check the authenticity of the content. So you can just select any piece of text and then run it through our plagiarism checker. It will tell you whether it has any piece of copied content or references that you can edit. So we give all these controls, and again, this is something which Chat GPT or any other tool won't provide, out of the box, right? So all these things make the content writing experience much more, I would say, emotional and practical for the real world use cases.
It's interesting. I mean, what you're describing is a product that's not really designed to write content, but to accelerate that content writing. And I think, it's really interesting you talk about plagiarism. I think a lot of brands are going to be very worried about plagiarism with AI. I mean, certainly some of the early AI generative text that we've seen has had plagiarism in it and has caused a lot of problems. I think CNET got into a lot of trouble recently, didn't they?
Right. And yeah, again, I think you have to make that clear to the end users, and you have to give them the right tools so that they can address those things as they go along. So I think it's ultimately the responsibility of the platform to encourage, the right kind of writing behavior, I would say.
And I mean, another thing I think that people are concerned about is where AI generated content has data or facts inserted by the AI, and whether the AI is actually correct or not. And I know, Google recently ran an ad where they actually had something that was wrong. So, I'm intrigued to know. I mean, Sam Altman, said that Chat GPT wasn't designed to be right. Are you doing things to try and make the output factually correct, or do you see that as being something where really, because it's somebody producing it for a project, it should be driven by the human, and the human should be driving those facts and information?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, so again, we encourage people to use it as a creative writer's block kind of tools to end the writer's block. But at the same time, when you get the content out, there is no guarantee that it will be 100% factually correct. So we encourage users to spend some time cross-checking the facts and stats which are thrown at them. And again, this is part of some of the training that we do, like on our side, the prompt engineering, so to say, is to avoid throwing exact or specific numbers as much as possible, and leave that task to the end user so they can decide what is the best stat or number or figure that can fit into that particular piece of content. But inevitably, you will come across cases where still AI would probably generate on its own some of the stats which could be fake. So we encourage users to review, and that's another reason why we ask them to go through things with a fine-tooth comb to make sure there are no sort of random figures. And the one thing which we're working on internally is called fact checker. So we are trying to work on these tools and features which can allow users to fact check some of the numbers which are thrown by AI or generated by AI. So that could potentially really address this issue big time.
That's interesting. I love the fact check idea. I think a lot of people would feel reassured if there was some degree of checking what's claimed in an article. I mean, another interesting challenge I think people have is that when you're using AI, the AI is fundamentally trained on a training set and kind of produces the average of what the training set is. Are you looking to, somehow train the AI on the very best marketing material, the very best blog post? Is that something that people in the AI sector are trying to do, or is it all about volume of content?
I think that's an interesting question. So yeah, I mean, some of the copywriting use cases that we have, we try to give those best, kind of best practices, so to say, the swipe file kind of examples, so the AI can produce content which is aligned with that sort of examples and samples we have shown. But still, there is a high probability that it'll just generate based on the learnings it has had, based on the underlying data set. So it's difficult, but again, with a lot of fine tuning, a lot of examples that you can provide, it obviously gets better and follows the guidelines that you have provided and tries to stick to those kind of examples. One of our sort of sister companies, Copysmith, they have a very unique approach to addressing this issue where they only work with like bigger companies, enterprises, instead of taking their existing content and trying to fine tune the AI models. So the content that is generated is very customized to their brand, their voice, their sort of product and description that is already out there. So there are ways to do it. But again, we want it to be a little more open-ended and less, I would say, one particular brand or sort of use case focused.
One of the things I'm interested in, just moving on to some of the applications, is there an area you think that generative AI today is doing really well? I mean, do you think, using a tool like Rytr is best for, short form social media posts, for ads, or for blogs? I mean, where do you think it really shines?
I think, you've hit the nail on the head. Like when you say, creative writing, content writing, I would say, and I think that's what Sama was alluding to maybe in the quotes that you mentioned. It's not meant to be like 100% factually correct. It's meant to remove that writer's block that you face in your creative content generation process. So if you're writing blogs, if you're coming up with video ideas or ad ideas or social media posts, I think that's where AI could really help you as an assistant to throw new ideas, new sort of direction of thinking, so to say. And I think that's where it really excels. So whether it is text generation or image generation or any sort of similar things, I think it really opens up new possibilities in terms of ideas that you can explore as a copywriter or a content writer. So that's where it excels. So I wouldn't expect it to write novels end to end, fully formatted, completely factually accurate. I don't think that's the intended use case, at least as of now. You should think of it more as a tool in our repository to sort of just get rid of that writer's block and come up with new angles to write about or think about.
I think that's really interesting. I mean, looking at it as a tool to help the writers today is fascinating. I mean, some people are almost saying, writing is dead, it's all going to be AI. And clearly you believe that writers have a lot of value to add. I mean, how do you see AI changing over the next 5 years? I mean, do you think it's going to get dramatically better, or have we seen a big jump in performance and now it's maybe going to hit a bit of a plateau?
I think you can probably see some of it, the possibilities already in front of you, right? I think that the vision of AGI it doesn't feel very far-fetched now with how the technology is evolving. I think the use cases will emerge in other industries as well. So I think what we have seen is just barely, scratching the surface in terms of content generation. But I think where you will see more of it being used is other day-to-day tasks. So things like predictive analytics, doing tasks on your behalf, automating a lot of internal tooling in a company, answering, questions on your site. So these are things where maybe, content creation or new ideas are less of a use case, but more about, how AI can actually do tasks, different kind of tasks, in a much better, simplified and efficient way for a variety of use cases. I think that's what I'll see more. I mean, I think we'll see more of over the next 5 years. Whether we'll get to see that dystopian world some people have, probably envisioned is yet to be. I think it's still far fetched, and I don't think we'll get there. It's a new piece of technology which we should embrace, try to embed it in different parts of our lifestyle and different tools that we use. And that's how I think it'll become over the next 5 years, just like an invisible piece of technology there to help you and guide you. And a lot of new kind of categories of jobs and skills will emerge. So I think some of the concerns are overblown. Some of the potential, I would say impact is also overblown, maybe in the dystopian sense. But, I think we have to use it wisely and use it for the right use cases. I think it can be really powerful piece of tech.
I'm pretty interested. I mean, the way you talk about this, it's all about, speeding up that process of generating content. I mean, do you have a number or a guide as to how much quicker someone could write, say, a blog post if they've got support from a product like Rytr versus, trying to do it all themselves, or an ad or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, funnily, actually, we've had a tool on our website, like homepage, from pretty much the early days when we launched, and this is exactly what we went. It's just an indicative sort of assessment of how much time and money you can save with a tool like Rytr. So it basically takes in the number of words you write, and we have some sort of logic in the background which tries to calculate, okay, if you write this much content, then you're probably spending this much time, and each hour of your time is probably this much in dollar amount, right, on average. So that gives us a sense of how much money and time you are saving by using a platform like Rytr based on how many words you write. So it's there right on the website. In fact, one of the stats we show when you land on it is how much time and money people have potentially saved by using a platform like Rytr.
That's awesome. And I think, I do feel sorry for people who are, writers as a job, because traditionally they've had very little investment in them. I mean, you buy them a word processor and that's it. And so it must be fairly easy to show massive ROI. You don't have to improve speed that much to get value from a tool like Rytr. I think that's fascinating.
Right. And, again, just touching upon that, I think if anything, it'll have a positive impact on the content creation process as well. So, I firmly believe that people with highly, I would say, sought after skills, or people who are really good at what they do, whether it is copywriting, blog writing, or just coding, or anything for that matter, they would probably benefit from this, because now you can probably appreciate their value even more. But I think some of the middle management and mediocre skills, like, just people writing content for the sake of it, nothing original, nothing, inspiring, I think they will probably have a hard time, because that can easily be replaced by something like, GPT, for example, or AI can do it for you. So I think it becomes important to upskill yourself if you are one of those sort of, middle layers, to try to, get to, I would say, more close to the client requirements, understanding the end user personas, and writing content which is really authentic and original and inspiring, which is good for overall, I would say, for the whole space, marketing space.
I really like that positive view of things. I think it's good to see that if AI is producing, as output fairly average content, if you're above average, you're going to be more valuable.
Exactly.
So if you upskill yourself, I think that's great. We like to ask a couple of more general questions. So it's really interesting. I mean, you're on the forefront of some massive change in marketing in terms of bringing AI to marketing. If a young person was thinking of marketing as a career, would you advise that, or having seen a lot of startups and work with them, would you advise them to do something different?
No, absolutely. I think even more so. I would encourage them even more so now with this technology, because, like I said, if you're really a champion of your skill, then I think your value is going to go up, even with this piece of technology. And if you know how to use this tech to your benefit, then it is even manifold, the impact that you can create. So I would definitely encourage. I always believe that the first principles, the fundamental needs, never change. Marketing is still marketing. You need to put content out there. You need to target certain people with that content, and you need to sell the solution, right? So the best bit of marketing advice I think I got was, don't think of it as a marketing, as a different function. It should be an extension of what you're doing, like a product you're selling. So the best marketing is something which doesn't come across as marketing. It comes across as educational, it comes across as helpful, and just as an extension of what you're actually selling and making money on. So I think that skill is still going to be even more valued going forward with the AI. And I think if you know your way around using AI, then you will be even better positioned going forward. So, keep at it, I would say.
That's great advice. I mean, I'm sure people listening to this will be quite excited and pleased to hear that actually Rytr's there to help them rather than to replace them. If they wanted to try Rytr, how would they get a chance to actually use the product and experiment with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we take pride in being one of the most seamless and easiest way to get started with AI writing, space. So just go to our website, rytr.me, and start writing. You'll see a easy to sign up process. Just sign up with any of your social accounts or email accounts. And then as soon as you're inside, you can just start generating content for a variety of use cases. We offer a very sort of healthy, I would say, free plan, so you don't have to put any of your payment information. You can generate up to 10,000 characters and use all the features that we offer pretty much. And if you need extra credits, then you can sign up to our saver plan, which is again very, very generous, just $9 a month. And you can generate up to 100,000 characters and some images as well. And then if you really want to up your game, then we have an unlimited plan, which is $29 a month for, and you can generate as much as you want. So it's fairly easy to get started.
Yeah, and I think most people, if they're like me, they've sat down, tried to write something, and been faced with a blank page and writer's block. That sort of pricing is pretty cheap to avoid that pain.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's why I think it's such a lifesaver for a lot of people, because you get tons of value for the money that you're spending. There is a lot of value you're getting from a tool like Rytr.
Abhi, I really appreciate it. You've been a great guest. If people listening to this would like, more information or get a hold of you, what would be the best way to reach you?
I mean, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can just drop me an email at abhi@rytr.me. That would probably be the easiest way to get in touch with me directly. And yeah, you can follow me on Twitter as well. Abhi __ Godara is my handle. So if there's anything I can help you with the AI writing space, using Rytr or anything else, just feel free to reach out to me, please.
That's very kind. And thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. I really appreciate it, Abhi.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you having me on the show. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Marketing B2B Tech. We hope you enjoyed the episode. And if you did, please make sure you subscribe on iTunes or on your favourite podcast application. If you'd like to know more, please visit our website at napierb2b.com or contact me directly on LinkedIn.